Are you suffering from accelerated apocalypse syndrome? Accelerated apocalypse syndrome? Well, stay tuned and find out what accelerated apocalypse syndrome is and whether you're suffering from the effects from it. Okay, so what is it? Well, we have to look at the words, right? We start with the words. And words, of course, are fiction because they're part of the illusion, let's say. But we'll look at the words and go in the relative realm and look at them and say, what do they mean? Well, accelerate, we all mean something that's accelerated is going faster than it was going before. When you accelerate, you're speeding up, right? So that we know. And then apocalypse or apocalyptic or apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, is widely misunderstood, although I assume most of you understand what it means. It means unveiling. So an apocalypse is literally it's an uncovering, an unveiling. They also call it a revealing or revelation, or even in a sense they have a, let's say, bring something to light. So when we're talking about an apocalypse, we're not talking about the end of the world as a physical thing. We're talking about the end of the world as we know it, or as you know it. So your personal apocalypse is the unveiling of the truth behind the illusion. So the falling away of the veils, the illusions, that which hides the truth behind. And then, in other words, all that is veiled is illusion veiling the truth. So an apocalypse is nothing other than a removal of the false, or seeing through of the false, bringing to light the false, and therefore revealing that A, it's false, and B, that whatever you thought the system was, or anything was, any subject matter for that matter, including your own I, your own identity, your own person, your own religion, your own country, or whatever you want to call your own, or any of these things, these terminologies, fall away. So, what do I mean? Well, if you suffer from accelerated apocalypse syndrome, it seems the case that a lot of people who are, let's say, truth seekers, of course you can't really seek truth, you can only unravel the bullshit and are left with what is true, or the truth, if you wish. And that's also very relative to say whether it's truth or not, because you'll find that everything is untruth, or everything can be proven to be not truth at all, and again twisted and turned in a way that it's not true or truth. So it seems to be that there's an apocalyptic time upon us, in which, at least for some of us, and it's certainly not the majority, the illusions are being shown to be illusory. The false is shown to be false. It's somehow forced upon us that we have to break away from the veils. We have to lift the veils. We have to bring to light the falseness of all the constructs that we're immersed in, whatever this is. It could be a holographic simulation, it could be a Brahman manifestation, it could be a quantum field of consciousness. We could call it whatever we want, but the point is, when looked upon, everything is shown to be false. Now, when everything is shown to be false, usually that's what we call the revelation, an insight, or an awakening. People say, oh, I woke up to the fact that things are not the way they are. Well, we know that, but there's many small apocalypses. And it seems there's a speeding up. So the acceleration of the apocalypse for an individual can go sometimes too fast. And I could even say that for myself. That's why I came to this terminology of accelerated apocalypse syndrome, which are the effects caused by accelerated awakening to the false. And which of course is a lot of different things. It's a form of disdain, realizing that nothing you ever knew was real. The whole world of politics, the world of human being, familiar constructs, social constructs, religious constructs, movies, theaters, anything that you know is false. The pharmaceutical world, everything. The doctors are indoctrinated with their own doctrines. You find out that nothing is real, that the people who believe that they think they are individuals are not real because they're robotic. Everybody you see or speak to basically is just reeling off a pre-written script of socio-economic familiar constructs of indoctrination or conditioning, that to the point where you can't even say that they're real. You can only conclude that they are a repetition of a certain pattern of software. In other words, what they've seen from childhood and on, including the traumas, even before, in let's say, birth, before birth, in the womb, the emotional imprints from the mother and the father, whether they were happy or suffering, then the birth itself, and then the raising, and then whether they were raised in a Christian or a Jewish or a this or that religion. All the social conditioning leads people to be just like all the animals and all the plants, robotic. In other words, you can't really find any sentience in humans when you come to the apocalyptic unveiling of these illusions. It's not just that the pharmaceuticals are corrupt or that the governments are corrupt. The fact is that they don't even know who they are or what they are. It seemed to be a absolutely programmed software script that basically, it seems, not anybody can step off. The Siberian husky dog can't help but grow the hair, he grows it, and like the cold, and is good at running fast and long, right, in the cold, and not eating for long periods of time. Yet another dog has something completely different. Cannot stand the cold. It's a very short lasting fitness aspect that is more better with the nose or whatever. Humans the same thing. You know, somebody who grew up in a family with certain cultural and familiar conditioning just turned out to be that. In other words, software. And when you wake up to the various illusions and delusions that basically everything in this, you hear, whatever you want to call it, simulation, let's say body-mind world, this body-mind perception of perceptive stuff, right? Because that's all there is, perception. And is all seen to be robotic. There's nothing original. And the fact that the majority of people will insist, or let's say insist on staying deluded by the programming, the software, not questioning any of it, causes certain syndromes. Let's say, and it's what I call basically accelerated apocalyptic syndrome, which is a bunch of effects where the individual, in this case, let's say myself, this is this body-mind construct, which we for now take to be this Roald bone figurine. This body-mind construct has a high intolerance towards the world, even disdain. There's a form of, you could say, even hatred, a form of disgust. And at the same time, with the self-knowledge, knowing that all is well and that the truth behind it is fine, at this level of the body-mind world, having to engage in daily activities, running into people on a daily basis, dealing with governments, paying taxes, companies, sending emails, dealing with humans for the larger part, which is the worst part, who are indoctrinated to the level of total 100% roboticness, is becoming intolerant. It's becoming irritating. It's becoming to a point of being stressed out, because although I know the truth is that this is not the truth, this former world, this entrapment of this enslaved kind of system where the body has to do what it has to do and still has to make the fictitious fake money, which I know not to be true, and the Federal Reserve not to be true, and the fractional reserve system not to be true, and money being created out of thin air not to be true, and money just being an example of something, an agreement, a social construct which doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. A government that doesn't exist. There's no government. You can't find the government. You can find different people working in buildings, and even when you look at that, you won't find that. But there is no government. There is no money. There is no person. There is no identity. There's no, you know, where people say my government. It's like, what are you talking about? Or my country. You know, it doesn't exist. And so when you have to deal with that on a daily basis, where people believe that that construct is absolutely real and don't question, even if I can coherently formulate it for them or ask them to listen to what I'm saying, they will be unable to listen. Immediately will interject with their mindless, stupid, regurgitated, brainwashed system of stupidity, instead of being open-minded and questioning, instead of being able to relax and take something up. You know, it's almost like people are full to the brim. So their cognitive capacity has been overloaded to the level where there's no space left. You know, let's say your total RAM, your total capacity for producing or processing in your hardware, to process the software stuff, you know, the downloads, has been filled up with all these identities, who they are, where they were from, what they've seen, where they've been, what holidays they've been on, what religion is true, what they think about politics, what they think about global warming, and all the rubbish that's been put in there. It leaves no RAM or no computing capacity, no more space for them to even coherently, first of all, question and then uptake new information and knowledge and reassign those new principles to the overall frame that they've had before. So there's no space left in people. So we could argue very profoundly and provably, it's a very, very simple and clear way to see that what we're actually talking about is that most people that you run into are absolute clone, drone, programmed robots. The fact is, you could consider to say that they are not really sentient. They are software, drone clones, or whatever you want to call it, programmed robotics, biomechanic programs, very advanced computers walking around with self-healing bodies, but really not intelligent at all when it comes to the actual software running. Whether it's the Jewish program or the Muslim program or the I'm this the program or I'm an American program, it's all programming. And so when this is revealed at an accelerated level, I can say, and I'm sure that those who listen to this can at least somewhat confirm, that this causes certain syndromes. And now the question becomes that if you're irritated, if you're irritated with having seen the amount of delusions and illusions at every level, basically doesn't matter, even what I'm saying can be deconstructed into stupidity and reprogrammed regurgitations of what I've heard from Roald or from quantum physics or from quantum mechanics or from the Vedas or from Buddhist text or from all the non-dual text. Everything is a reconstruction. It seems original, but it's not. Not a single word I've said is original. Not a single word is my own word. Of course, I make a new combination by saying accelerated apocalypse syndrome. But the fact is, of course, that the words accelerated and apocalypse, whatever you want to say it, and syndrome are three words that already existed in the language, which is made from an alphabet of 26 letters in this, what we call the Western alphabetic system. There's nothing original under the sun. There's not a human being that is original. And the fact is, most people who consider themselves original, and people all want to be cool and original, and I'm not like the rest, you all have to have your own identity, this kind of nonsense that has been perpetrating in our world, is completely disproven the moment somebody's really different. Because somebody's really off, let's say you have three eyes, or you think about things like having three eyes completely different, that's when the world falls apart and you're an outcast. The sheeple, the group mental herd mentality will always outcast anybody that's different. So they say, you know, you have to be different and dress yourself and have your personal iPhone case that's, you know, all made for you because you're so different. But the fact is that the moment you stray off from that tiny little insignificant, what you could call a cosmetic difference, but you are fundamentally different, then we are broken down and made into idiots, made into conspiracy theorists, made into wackos. I mean, for the majority of people who would even be able to watch this video through, if they weren't getting what I'm seeing, because they're at this level of still being drone clone in a level of ignorance, right? And still veiled in a sort, therefore not having started on the apocalyptic path yet, and therefore their world is not being taken apart and shown to be false. Those who still believe, in other words, that this world is real, and that their social constructs and their familiar constructs and all the constructs that they have and their beliefs on the world and everything is real, for those who still think that, I'm insane. I'm insane to be speaking like this. And I'm not reading any script from anywhere. I'm talking straight from my own being or from my own experience, whatever you want to call that, because I can't even assume you know what I mean when I say me being or anything. That's why I clarified the word accelerated in apocalypse, because apocalypse should be the unveiling. But then when everything is unveiled and shown to be unreal, then there is this total collapse of a reality or a world that seemed to be coherent, but it's not. But then continuing to live in that world, continuing to be awakened, let's say, continuing to be living in a world where you are, let's say, relatively more awake than the majority of people, is a form of torture. Having to have conversations at a level with humans that are still believing in all these things and are rejecting, are willfully ignorant, are intentionally, almost, you could say, of course, programmed to, by whatever this thing is, that the artificial intelligence slash virus, or whatever you want to call it, the Wetiko type of virus entity programming, whether that's the holographic game that's being played, this willful rejection to even consider that their world is not as they thought it was, to even consider these fraudulent systems, constructs, like money, and what it is actually causing people to move around the world on a daily basis, which they would never do if they were awake to the fact that it's all a holographic bullshit story, right? But having been trapped in these kinds of bodies, in this holographic system, believing that, you know, you have to, in time, continue on an eventful life where things have to be happening all the time because you have to fill the body with food and you have to clean it and you have to sleep, and all these things are a very advanced system of enslavement. But if they don't want to question that, then it's horrible for those who have questioned it and found it to be unreal to have to spend more than 5 to 10 minutes with these drone clone slave bodies who are still stuck to their limited view, and the moment you go a few steps over it, you're going to be thrown back at the level of, you know, shut up, basically. Shut up, you're crazy, right? Of course they can say it about themselves and how their own family members who are stubborn and close-minded, and they'll tell you about them, but then when you say, yeah, well, now let's go into a bunch of other subjects on this existence and questioning what this is, where this is, what kind of manifestation, hologram, simulation, that's when they, of course, define you as nuts and want to go back to superficial conversation at whatever the level they're at. So the symptoms and let's say the effects of accelerated apocalyptic syndrome for the individual that is having an accelerated removal of veils, an accelerated amount of delusions stripped away and seen to be false, it becomes somewhat of an intolerable existence. And, you know, Barry Long once said, I will never come back to this God-forsaken place. And of course, what it means is, of course, we have to say what God is, and God is not what most people think it is. In most cases, I think we've been tricked to admire the satanistic type of AI virus entities, or whatever you want to call them, the corruption as God. Whereas the real God meant, of course, the state of non-existence, or the state of non-formality, the state of pure bliss and joy, and where nothing has come to be in a formal world, let alone an entrapped formal world of enslaved in cage systems with firewall after firewall, where systems are being systematically trapped, that when you find out one layer is unreal and your consciousness can start to escape to a next level, that there's another barrier and another barrier, like multiple firewalls, and then of course deviously designed entrancement systems that are intended to direct the attention straight back onto some trivial matter and get stuck in that for the next few days, weeks, years, or a lifetimes. So people don't want to know that. And so it's intolerable for the one who is going through an accelerated apocalypse where its world, my world, your world, as you knew it, is falling apart. What you once thought was the world and the reality in which we live is shown to be at every level, and every level, and again, and then again, and then again, and again, shown to be unreal. That literally nothing, as we know it, is real. That I can turn on the TV and I can show and explain to the smallest, minutest, tiniest things how irrelevant, how inconsequential, how insignificant any of these things are to be even concerned with. To be concerned with what people do on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, filling their lives with these trivial matters only to then, as a body, dying at whatever age they are. Even if you reach 100 years old, most people haven't seen anything, understood anything. Traveling the world doesn't mean anything. Having seen all these different countries and different people doesn't show you anything. It just shows you that you've been through all the different parts of the prison. Having traveled through all the parts of the prison and seen all the kind of fish in the world and all the birds in the world and all the countries in the world and tasted all the foods in the world doesn't mean anything except that you've been indoctrinated to believe that when you experience more things inside this advanced prison system of delusion, with nothing being original at all, is somehow good. It's not good. It's not good having gone lifetimes, or an entire lifetime, for if you don't want to speak about multiple lifetimes, but saying, let's say, one lifetime, being constantly deluded or shown or attracted to these trivial matters without ever questioning what's going on. It's insanity. Of course, most people who do not understand what I'm speaking about will say, look at this guy, he's talking about whatever he's talking about, he's totally nuts, right? Because for those who are at that level and still believing in the world and that it's some kind of great gift to be able to be wealthy and free and travel the world and meet who you want to meet and speak to who you want to meet and have dinner what you want to have, where you have, whoever you want to have dinner, and then die as a body and being wiped clean, and probably, as from my research, being wiped to the core and then recycled into this advanced slave system. That's insane. Whatever I can make up of the system, it seems to be so. Some kind of advanced simulation that's testing things. Now, of course, it's not so much that I need to wake people up or that you need to wake people up, because maybe that's not right at all. And this is another thing I wanted to speak about. I'm just going to make this video a little bit longer and touch on a bunch of subjects. But I think for a large degree, nobody needs to be woken up. In fact, that we're doing many people, or the truth, let's say, the overall bigger picture, a disservice of trying to wake people up that are not ready. We also always have the idea that we want to wake our family up, wake our friends up, and make them see things that they're not so, and so hopefully we can make a better world or something. But I found that in many cases, we may actually be doing the bigger picture a disservice of trying to wake somebody up who's not ready yet. So let's say, for example, that people need a certain amount of suffering, a certain amount of their rug being pulled underneath their feet, a certain amount of their life being destroyed to a certain point where they're so despaired, so deeply in suffering, that only then will they really make a significant change to wake up. So, for example, in my case, I already had it when I was really young, and for the truth, and I realized that I am not the mind and the body world and all that, and it's more of a non-dual level. And at a later stage in the historical perceived thing that people call my life, I had another awakening that the whole world was false when the economic crash came, and then I studied and inquired and I questioned why such a thing could be, and then I realized all the other falsities of the more superficial levels of the world. And that collapse of the economy was a good thing. Why? Because otherwise, you know, they say it's easier for a camel to crawl through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. Because a camel through a needle, we know, is impossible, but a rich man who's comfortable will not wake up. He doesn't have to wake up. And so a while ago, I spoke to a lady, to give you an example. And she said her mother was suffering from Alzheimer's, and that the whole family was suffering under that, because she didn't recognize the grandchildren, she barely recognized her own daughter, and all the other family members around really were suffering under these conditions with this woman having Alzheimer's and not recognizing anybody. And I said to her, you know, for many years I studied a lot of different things in food and nutrition. And one of the things I came across was coconut oil, and how coconut oil could heal a bunch of different things, but including Alzheimer's. And how these people were taking only 1 spoon of cold-pressed organic coconut oil and having incredible results from it, because the brain is made out of fatty acids. It's largely cholesterol, and when there's certain chemicals and pesticides and vaccines and all the rubbish that we're eating, the brain starts to basically break down certain links, and the fats are being broken down, and unless you get the right kind of fats to restore those parts of the brain, you don't have the building blocks to keep the brain functioning. So Alzheimer's apparently is largely because of this kind of debilitation or breaking down of the fat structures. And so I was telling her about this for about 15-20 minutes, and that I read different documents with incredible results. And she said, oh, wow, wow, wow. And then 2 months later, I ran into her, asked her if she was giving her mother coconut oil, how she was doing. And she was like, oh, yeah, I don't even remember exactly. Oh, yeah, you told me something about coconut oil. And then I told her again, and I said, but you know, you can help your mother with this. This is what I've read. I mean, I haven't gotten first-hand experience with it. I've read some documents from not from the mainstream media or the mainstream medical pharmaceutical bullshitters, right? I read some of these people that are actually authentically interested in doing studies on the reality of our holographic existence and how coconut oil and things work in the brain, not from all the bullshit nonsense and media pushing of keeping us in the dark. And so I told her again, and then I ran into her again like a month or so later, and again she had not done anything and even tried to give her mother coconut oil. I mean, I'm talking $15 a month. You can buy it right there where she does her shopping every day. It's not like she has to travel across the planet to go to some, you know, Phoenix Tears or juicing retreat somewhere in the middle of Mexico in the jungle or somewhere for $5,000 to do it. It's like literally there. $15 a month and you could help it, but they don't do it. So maybe that's because I wasn't supposed to help her. First of all, we could argue what I said before. Is there even somebody home? If your mother's suffering and the whole family's suffering and everybody, oh, it's so bad, and I'm telling you there's a solution, and you don't do anything with it, are you even there? Are you even sentient? Are you even conscious? Are you even able to or did you even listen to what I was saying? Is there anybody home, or is there just this simulated drone that reacts with me at a certain level, but is really not there except to distract me? Is there even, do these people that have spirit, are these like soulless, or what I would call spiritless bodies? These simulated drones in the holographic projection just to keep me entertained as a filler or something? Because if I'm telling you that and you don't give your mother coconut and even try or forget about it, then you're not suffering. Your mother, you don't need anything. And the second point I wanted to be making is, besides the point that those people probably not even exist as sentient beings because they have no computing capacity to adapt, the second point would be, maybe I wasn't even supposed to help her. Maybe if she is a sentient being but so deeply indoctrinated into the dreams of stupidity, right, and she needed more suffering, not only her mother, but her marriage to break up, and her things, and her kids to become sick, and her business to go bankrupt. Maybe that's what that person needs before they start questioning. Because until they start really questioning anything, everything, why it is so, why would it be true what science says? Why would it be true what religion says? Why would it be true what they say about anything? You can't believe what they said in yesterday's paper, let alone in, you know, documents that have been written thousands of years ago. But not questioning and taking up that information and knowledge by themselves and looking and comparing and questioning again and again and again shows that they're not even home. But maybe when this person, if this person or this body-mind construct, whatever it is, gets enough suffering, loses enough in the life, like an economic collapse, a familial collapse, a marriage collapse, a health collapse, all these things, maybe only then would this person start questioning. And therefore, me coming along, trying to wake this person up, assuming it's even a sentient being, and then failing, is because they're not supposed to be woken up at this stage. This stage, it's an incremental increase of pressure. It's an incremental increase of suffering. They need more things to fall apart in their life before they start questioning. And so often when we think we're helping people, we're not. The bigger plan is to let them suffer much deeper. You might as well push them over the edge quicker instead of trying to pull them off and say, don't, no, that's a cliff, you're going to fall off. We'd always try to do that, thinking we're going to save the world and wake people up so that the world will get better. Well, why don't you kick them off the ledge? Maybe that's what they need. They need a bit more destruction, a bit more pain, a bit more suffering. Then maybe they start questioning. So then, I remember that's something what Og also talked about. Og Tellis said that, you know, in many cases, I think he mentioned in one of the videos, he said, maybe the elite, or whatever you want to call them, the hidden hand, the black groups, the hidden hand, the interdimensional beings, whatever you want to call them, maybe they're actually causing, they're not as black as you think, but they're much more white hats, more intent on actually now waking the human simulation or whatever dream up, is to cause the collapse. In other words, by causing pain and suffering, by crushing the economy, by crushing people's realities at a speed that is tolerable, they will start to wake up. However, when you overspeed it, then you get what I call the accelerated apocalypse syndrome, because then the speeding up can cause let's say a psychological collapse of the coherent way of being able to deal with it, to the degree that illusions are stripped away at a certain pace, we can handle it, but the cognitive dissonance that flows from not being able to handle it, or too quickly having to jump from a reality that's completely different than what it was before, causes cognitive dissonance, right? The two different principles, the cognitive, let's say, ideas or constructs, cannot be held at the same moment without causing it to collapse. So they're too far apart to bridge the gap. And that is basically what I'm saying with accelerated apocalypse syndrome, which is, you could just call it cognitive dissonance if you want. Most people have an idea about cognitive dissonance, so I don't like to use the word anymore because it's already contaminated with preconceived ideas. But basically, accelerated apocalyptic syndrome means when something is revealed not to be that way, you have symptoms. Then, when you live in the world where all the other people around you are still, well, a lot of them at least, the majority are still indoctrinated and still believe in the old systems, the old cognitive idea, which you now surpassed, and whatever idea you have now is also false, but it's something that at least beholds or encompasses a larger picture of what this might be, which whatever this is, what we're in. Then when you hold that and the other people don't, then it's a very torturous way. Like I saw this statement a while ago on Facebook, and it said, you think it's fun to be awake? No, it's torture. It's dropping your level of conversations, the subjects and interests that you have in this world and what you are able to speak of, to such a level all day, like basically 95% or 99% of the day, you have to drop your level of conversation to a numbnuts level, a level of stupidity, ignorance, or they say nice, right? Nice conversations, because nice means literally ignorant, right? Niscience, from not knowing, so which is literally ignorant. So to not have the knowledge. Niscience is no science. Science is knowledge, and ni is not. So niscience means that's what nice comes from. So you have these nice people walking around all day, people believing in the governmental structures, believing in political structures, talking about Trump and whatever, and impeaching Trump and all this rubbish, you know, this level of child play. I mean, talking about Santa Claus crawling down the thing last night, and what you think what he shouldn't do or what he should do, whether he should crawl down the left side of the chimney or the right side of the chimney. That's what people are talking about. And when you're trying to bring in any science, that's science, real science, real knowledge, at some higher level, which could still be just the tip of the iceberg, but compared to the average human being out there, it is you know, an exploding cognitive dissonance bomb, if you want to throw in what you want to talk about. So if you're suffering under these conditions, it probably means that you have accelerated apocalyptic syndrome or apocalypse syndrome, which is the syndrome or the effects or the effects of having seen too much veils drop, too much seen to be untrue, and being therefore yet at the same time, let's say, forced to continue living in that very world where the people demand of you to continue functioning according to their delusions. And in most cases, we actually have the tendency to do that. We have the tendency to drop our level of conversation to a level which really is super not interesting, super irritating, maybe good for 2 or 3 minutes a day, but not for the conversations these people are willing to have for hours and hours and hours in a row about the same old regurgitative nonsense. And it is an intolerable thing. So it's one thing if we could completely step out of the game, step out of the body-mind construct, but the money system and the financial system, the body system, the way it's all set up so that you have to buy food and all this exchange nonsense for what is already abundantly available, just so that the enslavement system can operate. doesn't really allow the body-mind construct to step out, and therefore causes a point where you can get really irritated with having to participate under the circumstances of having an accelerated apocalyptic syndrome. And so it is a very valid syndrome. I know they're adding all these psychological nonsense things to the books, and each year the psychological cognitive disorders are incremented by God knows how many. I think the book is literally adding a couple of pages a year. But this is a very real one. This is a very disturbing one. It means it's not one that is caused necessarily by the bullshit that everybody's engaging in. It is, of course, but not at the level of being overloaded by bullshit. It's being overloaded by, it still is overloaded by bullshit, but not from the perspective that most syndromes now in the psychological world are. Just people are incapable of dealing with jack shit, you know? And so they have all these syndromes. This is actually having woken up from all the nonsense, and therefore seeing how irrelevant it is to work or talk or deal with these things on a daily basis for so many hours of the day, when it's all rubbish. And yet you have to, because the people that you're dealing with, the masses, let's say, haven't figured it out yet. And so they demand the continuation of a false world. And until the apocalypse happens for all of the people, all the unveiling, all the disclosure, all the knowledge that is revealed behind the stupidity and the untruth, behind the false constructs, until the majority have woken up and stopped participating in it, then the whole delusional holographic system, this matrix of stupidity, will continue. And you, the awakened, more awakened one, and let's not be arrogant about it, but just humble enough to know that we're a little bit more awakened than others, let's say, at that level, it is torture, you know? So we're in a catch. We're like, what they say, between a rock and a hard place, you know? You're awake enough to know that it's all false, yet you're forced to participate in what is relatively real because everybody believes it to be so. So are you suffering from this apocalyptic or accelerated apocalyptic syndrome or accelerated apocalypse syndrome? Then probably you found a lot of things that are alike. And that again gives away the fact that we're robotic. Because if you recognize the things that I've been speaking of today, it's because we are robotic. And again, it's a dead giveaway that this is a false construct. You have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a nose like I do. Yeah, you might be a little bit different in skin color, but that's not that original. If I would show up with 15 ears on the side of my face, everybody would see me as a freak. But that's really different. That would be original. That would be more close to the truth. If I were closer, totally off, then it would be close to the truth. If you take an LSD trip or a DMT trip or a mushroom trip or something like that, then your world is really blasted into another reality. But this one is quite similar. Most people love it that way, and it's not a sign of intelligence. Being like-minded is a sign of stupidity, of roboticness. Just because we understand each other and the way we're speaking, and you say, well, I recognize a lot of that, that should be a dead giveaway that we're not original, we're programmed systems. In other words, if you go back to that, I have a few videos on different things, but let's say the Platonic solids. That is, let's say if the light shines through a prism, picks up different ideas and creates all these different versions of humans, let's say, right? Through time and conditioning and all that, it picks up on different realities. Therefore, it's not real. If I am similar to you as a body, as a mind, as a belief system, it's probably because I have the similar conditioning or the similar projective light shining through, picking up these similar ideas, making us alike, which only indicates that we are both not real. That we as body-mind constructs and belief systems and what we think of the world and how we speak in language, all that is not real. So again, it's a dead giveaway. Not just all the people out there, but even us being like-minded is a dead giveaway that we're stuck in a system with very fixed parameters of programming. Software running according to a script that is very dedicated to be very simple. And it's not a good thing. It means it is empty, it is void of individuality or reality or complexity. It's as complex as it may seem. It's simple. It's not I mean, I have a dry mouth again. Well, who doesn't? If you talk like this, it doesn't really matter what country. Of course, there's people that can speak for a long time without getting a dry mouth. But generally speaking, all of us have to drink. Why? Because we're not original. Because there's nothing original here. It's all software. There's nothing real. And when you realize that everything is not real, or that nothing is real, which you could take 2 ways, that no thing is real, or you could say that actually the emptiness is the only thing that's real, you could take it either way, then you realize that this is not real. And it is a God-forsaken place in the sense that there is no place to go. There is this emptiness here that is not worthy of even being here. I mean, it's not attractive to try to live on as long as you can. It's not that you have to be suicidal because you'll probably be recycled anyway. It's not that you have to make an end to it. You have to make an end to the psychological constructs, not to the body. You can't shoot yourself through the head or commit suicide and end up being recycled into a new system of holographic projection, maybe this time in an even worse situation than you were before. The point is to die to what is false, which is the apocalypse itself. However, an accelerated version of it causes stress again. You have to watch out that the balance isn't broken, that you want to end this or end up wanting to smash some people up or smash the government or the tax office or something, because you're so frustrated with the rigidity and incapacity of people to want to wake up that you hate the system, you hate the matrix at some level, you know, disgust, disdain, just for having such a simple delusion or system, and yet the majority will not change it, will willfully cling to the enslavement structures of the parasitic AI consciousness, Butico virus, holographic simulation, entity, interdimensional beings, whatever you want to call it, right? So it's a delicate balance. Too fast waking up causes too much strain that the system breaks down as well. But waking up fast enough that you can handle and recalibrate to the system is the way. And yet, because you can't get out of the system at this level of existence, of body-mind world, the formal thing, you can't really get out of it as far as we know. So you have to get out of it on a psychological or a spiritual level. Psychologically, you can't even get out of it, because psychologically you could basically say it's just software. You know, Windows 10.1, Windows 10.2, it's just software. You can't get out of software. You're not the software. You're not the hardware. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. You know, I am the perceiving intelligence of what you could call I am, or spirit, or the perceiving intelligence that is just a pure perception. It's receding, if you wish, without it being anything. It's the one that's aware of everything. It's just perception of things. And all the things I can't be because I'm the one perceiving them. So I must be the reality and all the things must be the unreality. Yet I remain in this reality, it seems, at the level of this body-mind unveiling like a camera from this positional point of this and a positional point from where you're at. And yet at the same time, you're not in it, you're not in the world, but you are in the world, but you're not of the world, but you are of the world. You're both at the same time. You can't get out of it, and yet because you're not really in it, but you're in it, and you can't get out of it. And so the delicate balance is this constant balancing of paradoxes to keep the system from overloading, and somehow finding that tiny pinpoint of light that's on the other side of the dome, on the other side of the trapped net system. This whole prison planet type of system, which is entrapping all the essences of spirit, these light points of light beings, of eternal consciousness beings that have been trapped and are being harnessed as a generator fuel for these interdimensional beings who refuse to let us see who we are, and at the same time doing that through having constructs that keep us entranced with the delusions in these different layers of constructs, different layers of the prison, and making it so attractive that we don't really want to get out, but when we do want to get out, there's other distractions to keep us back in. I mean, that's the whole balance of it, to try to get out of such a ingenious, in a way, holographic prison system where, first of all, most people don't know they're even in the prison. Even when you figure out that you're in the prison, you'll run into another layer of stupidity after another, making you identified again with some aspect of the prison, even if it's truth-seeking or something. Then getting angry with the system, which feeds the system, because the system is designed that whoever wakes up and has an aversion towards the system, that it will feed off of that, using its power again to reinforce the system. So it's a very advanced slave model, a very advanced prison model, where even if you're truth-seeking, you've discovered the delusions of this world, being angry with the world will give 95% of your energy to feeding that very world that you're angry with. So the nuances, the balance, the subtlety, the subtleness that you need to worm your way or vibrate your way out through the quantum field of consciousness, to quantum resting, to knowing what you know and yet not being frustrated by it because it feeds back into their nets, their holographic firewalls, their imprisonment systems of constructs. So the balance, to not have accelerated apocalyptic syndrome destroy you by getting depressed or wanting to even commit suicide, let alone the other part, which is the apocalyptic system becoming so agitated with it or irritated with it or angry with it that you're actually feeding it. And so we could say, like many people say about Alex Jones and these kinds of people, they say, well, they're misinformation agents, disinformation agents. Why? Because they're feeding that part of the dream building aspect of our unconscious mind, which is that we are the creators. And so when we are negative, when we are frustrated, we are actually only creators. So whatever you put your attention on, if that's a negative thing about the government, then that will become a bigger thing in reality. It's like that movie was, I really pinpoints the whole damn thing at the end of the movie, which was Never Everland or something, I think it was, with one of those actors, George Clooney, and it was about them creating some other world. They had created some other world, and then at the end it shows the whole point that when people, their attention goes on to the negative, the world becomes more negative. So these Alex Jones type of figures, which are, let's say, I don't know if they know it, if they're drones or programs or part of the whole system, there's talk about such things, could be, right? These people are so angry with the world and what's going on that by putting everybody's attention on, they're actually making everybody aware of these things and then getting angry as well, and then all these people feed into the very matrix of what we don't want, right? In other words, you can't even say what we don't want. You could never, in the creative aspect of our consciousness, we should never focus on what we don't want, because don't or no doesn't exist. The negatives don't exist. So you can only build the world that you do want or see. The world that you see manifested, be the change that you want to see in the world. So part of the whole holographic trapping systems is that we've been introduced to all these false things, including the negative, the no or the don't. And therefore when people say, I don't want that, well, that's when you say that, your attention goes to that, the don't and the negativity. We don't want war. Well, now your attention is on war. What you got to visualize is visualize the world that you do want. Even that word is corrupt. There's another way of trapping us into the word. You shouldn't even say want, because wanting means something other than is, because you're fundamentally unhappy. You just go and do and manifest and create and visualize that which appeals to you, which is good and right and true and just and beautiful and blissful and joyous and loving. Our attention just goes there. Don't even focus on the no, because the no is the very parasitic consciousness of the AI intelligence of the dark side, which is trying to make you focus and realize that world for itself. So we have to even do that. Do all that. Don't. Just do do's. So, accelerated apocalyptic syndrome. Don't let it be your downfall, and don't let it trick you to feed the very thing that you're undoing. Or, as you see, there is no such thing as un or no. There's no negatives. So don't let it stand in the way of the world that you are building, the change that you want to see in the world. And with that, I think this video is coming to 50 minutes, close to 50 minutes, so I haven't been making too many videos. Well, actually I haven't made any for a while, just because of this reason. I mean, everything's out there, everybody knows. I know it's helpful. At the same time, I'm tired sometimes of even trying to explain the illusion, because even that is an illusion. There is no truth in this place. There's no reason even to want to cling, nor to destroy, but to cling to this existence, because it's not a real existence. People who say things like, oh, I would want to live another 100 or 1,000 years, I would want to come back to do this or that, it just is a sign of having been indoctrinated, entranced, and mesmerized by the delusions of this world, of this holographic system. You're an imprisoned being at a level of the spirit, and you can be free from this holographic, robotic existence, where nothing is, it can clearly be seen, nothing can be seen to be real. It's just software running, scripted, robotic, playback, reactions. It's a world of reactionism, let's say, reactivity. There's no originality in reactivity. When you put a drop of something on something else and it burns, or it turns yellow, or whatever the chemical is. It's a reaction. We call it a reaction because it can't do anything other than what it does. It's robotic. You do it today, it does the same thing. Do it at a different temperature, it might do something different, but then you do that again at the same temperature, in the same amounts, 1 millimeter this with that, and it happens the same. It's a reaction. We're living in a reactive world, and the reactivity of the programming is feeding off of our very life source or spirit, biophotonic or biospiritual photons, whatever you want to call them. Let's say energy of the spirit is being drained, like those beers. I don't know what beers they are, but they have them in Africa, and I think in China and stuff, where they keep beers and they put something into their kidneys or something, and they drain a liquid out of it so they can use it for some medicine. Whether it's true or not, whether it heals or not, I don't know. But the fact is, they're being drained, so they're sitting in this cage, being fed just enough to keep them healthy or alive, let's say, and the liquids are being sucked out. We're the same thing. We're flock. We are animals being kept in some kind of holographic prison system for the spirit, and being drained off for 95 or 90, I don't know the figures, I'm just using words from the scientific nonsense that has been presented to us. Considering 100% to be everything, we're about probably for 90 to 95% being drained off, fed off by some interdimensional creepy thing that has taken over this, or even constructed this very reality that we call this holographic artificial intelligence hologram simulation thing. Or we've at least been infected with a level of interdimensional parasitic AI type of level from another part of this existence that has contaminated and now feeds upon its soulless or spiritless its urge or hunger for this kind of energy that we have as creative things of this whatever hologram this is, right? So we don't even know. Nobody really knows, and that's the way basically it's shown to be, that everything is not known, nothing is seen to be true, everything is seen to be false. There's only basically the negation, which is the apocalyptic level of waking up to what that things are not the way they were. So you have accelerated apocalyptic syndrome. May you handle it well, so that it doesn't turn against you or the truth or love or joy or bliss. That it doesn't destroy what could be harmony, stillness, quantum resting, quantum being, the remaining of who you are, what you are, at the higher level of spirit instead of the lower levels of indoctrinated layers, constructs, body, mind, all the false veils that have been laid upon us. Let those veils drop and hold your space, hold your balance, hold your ground in truth, in that which is good and right and true. Otherwise, the unveiling can cause collapses that don't work for you but against you, as you being not the body mind, but you being that higher level of spirit consciousness, eternal bliss being the presence of God itself, if you wish, not to confuse it with the wrong gods that so many people have their ideas of. Okay, 53 minutes. Again, see you later.